Every time that the president of Finland speak, I'm impressed. And as a Canadian now living in Thailand, this make me jealous. I feel like I can tell how healthy and prosperous a country is by listening to your president speak. And your president in Finland make me profoundly jealous. I hope that you're proud of him because every time that he speak, I'm impressed. So let's react to an interview he did about Trump that for me as a Canadian always interests me. Let's go.
Just fine.
You know President Trump well. You have described him as a friend. You've played golf with him. He is also...
First sentence. You know President Trump well. You talk to him as a friend. She didn't say friendly. She didn't say that they have a good relationship because it's a good thing to have a good relationship with America. She said the word friend to bait him. He's not going to fall for it. He's too smart, right?
described himself as a friend of President Putin. Have you ever heard President Trump talk about the possibility of putting pressure on Vladimir Putin or not?
Yes, definitely. I mean, in diplomacy, you have to remember that, I come from a small country, so it's important to have good relations with roughly 200 world leaders. And of course, the President of the United States is in a very strong position. So the first time we...
He's so smart. Instead of saying, no, I'm not his friend, he said, look, it's important to have a good relationship. This is such the perfect answer. This is the best answer ever.
World leaders. And of course, the President of the United States is in a very strong position. So the first time we met, he asked the question, can you trust Putin? And my answer was, no, you can't. And of course...
See, instead of saying, no, I'm not his friend, she said, we need to have good relationship with America. Great answer. Smart. She's going to try to bait him the whole interview. I can tell. Look at the smirk on her face. She's going to try.
Then we go a little bit back and forth. Right now, I think we are in a much better place, both from a military perspective, politically, in other words, negotiations, and financially. So it's important to also stress the message that we need to continue to put pressure on Russia, for instance, in terms of sanctions. And I've heard President Trump talk about those many times.
Although we know that Russian tankers were unsanctioned during the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which just seemed absolutely extraordinary to people, not just extraordinary, disgraceful to people in Ukraine.
I think American foreign policy right now, and they would say themselves, is rather transactional. So you have to also remember that the United States did sanction companies like Rosneft and Lukoil a while back, which has hit the
He speak like a leftist. The true power. He understands that America and a lot of country, not just America, a lot of European country play both sides. They feed both sides of a war. And for them, it's good if the conflict in Ukraine lasts much longer because it weakens Russia, right? And for them, they really want Ukraine to succeed, but they don't want Ukraine to succeed too quickly. So let's not pretend that people care about Ukraine that much. I don't think people care about Ukraine. It's all politic again, and he's explaining this really
the
well.
Russian economy
So
very
smart.
hard, and now they are desanctioning from the earlier decision. But my message is quite clear. Russia is not going to end this war because of economic adversity. Russia is not going to end this war because of losses in the battlefield. Right now we're talking about a ratio of 1 dead Ukrainian soldier to 8 Russian soldiers.
So
but what's
smart.
going to change is the mood of the general population. And the general population in Russia is now turning against the war because of the long-range attacks on oil refineries, because summer camps on the Crimean Peninsula have had to be cancelled, and because the internet and Telegram and WhatsApp has been closed. So we just need to continue to increase the pressure. Why do we do this? Not to escalate. We do it so that we can get a ceasefire and come to the negotiating table.
I want to ask you about something that Britain's former Defence Secretary, John Healey, has...
I kind of respect his answer. He's like, we could, as the West, bulldoze into Russia and put a lot of pressure early on, but it would be more bloody, so we play the long game, right? Which let's just say both way are bad for the Ukrainian people. There's no good outcome for Ukraine at the end of all of this. There's going to be Western influence in Ukraine no matter which side take what at the end. And it's the same for Gaza. It's the same for a lot of other area, unfortunately.
Talked about today. He resigned a number of weeks ago. You may be aware of that. And he has said that obviously NATO has warned we must prepare for war with Russia within 5 years. Finland, as you know, you don't need
Is he in Turkey? There's a Turkish flag, right?
me to tell you, has a border with Russia that's
Unless I'm
extremely long,
stupid.
800 miles long. He thinks, John Healey thinks, President Putin will test Article 5 in the coming years. Is he right?
Well, you know, we Finns are cool, calm and collected, and we have just doubled NATO's border with Russia, and we have not had any skirmishes them since the Winter War and the War of Continuation, which is otherwise known as World War II. So our
Cool, calm, and collected. See. When he speak, it's like it's a true general. Speaking of border, Russia border Canada, if you didn't know, in north. So Russia is a lot closer to America than people think, you know.
assessment
To
is
North
that
America.
in the short term there will be hybrid tests. We've seen those in the Baltic Sea, we've seen those with drones, and we see them every day with cyber. And in the long term we need to prepare for the Russian threat. That's why we're here in Ankara implementing 5% of defense expenditure, and as a Finn I of course hope that everyone else will do that. So prepare for the worst in order to avoid it is the Finnish message, and if that fails, take a sauna and a ice bath and you'll be just fine.
If only it were that simple. But can I ask you, President Stubb, when you say prepare for the worst, what does the worst look like? What do you mean?
Well, worst case scenario obviously is a test of Article 5. But you have to remember that NATO is the biggest military alliance in the world. It defends 1 billion people. It has never been attacked apart from 9/11. So the whole idea of even testing Article 5, I think, is quite far away. We have
Hold on, Mr. President. I saw a speech of Trump the other day who said that he want to take Greenland again. On Polymarket, there's a small chance that Trump is going to try to do something. I don't think it's going to happen. But if there's one president that could destroy NATO, it's Trump. And I think that NATO without America, it doesn't really work anymore, in my opinion. So
have to, however, be realistic that when the war hopefully ends as soon as possible in Ukraine, that will then increase the threat level, and then we're going to have to make sure that, you know, we have the capabilities in Europe, that Americans are there with us, and NATO stays strong and steadfast. And the reason that Finland had the fastest negotiations to become a NATO member is because NATO needed us. We needed NATO as well, but we are a security provider, not a security consumer. So we'll do our part together with the alliance to make sure that Russia will not test Article 5.
I'm still
smart.
not clear, President Stubb, what you mean by prepare for the worst. Can you give me an example?
Yeah, you have to prepare land, air, sea, cyber and space, and that is
he answered her like she's 3 years old. I love him. Cool, calm, collected. And then he just named, he's like a teacher, right? He's teaching dumb interviewer. I love him because he's almost like sarcastic, or he's funny. I think he's funny on purpose. I think it's just Finnish humor, right? But he say all the right thing with a straight face, but it's Finnish humor, right?
what a country like Finland is doing, that's what most of the allies are doing, and that's what NATO is doing. That is one of the worst case scenarios that we have. But again, you know, be a little bit more calm, be a little bit more Finnish, and understand that it is not in the vested interest of Russia to test Article 5. That's why they have never done it.
She want him to say, we're gonna fight Russia, we're gonna go to war, maybe World War III. She want him to be dramatic for effect. This guy doesn't care about clickbait and stuff like this. It's just, I'm not gonna give you what you want me to give you as an answer.
We have an outgoing Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. I wonder what your thoughts about him are as he leaves the world stage.
Well, I have to admit that I'm quite subjective. You might know that my wife is originally British. She has dual nationality. My children have dual nationality, so I have a close affinity to things British. I've become very good friends with Keir Starmer. And I think the big challenge with liberal democracy today, this is not only with the UK, is that people are challenged, especially if you are Prime Minister. I actually like the cool, calm and collected type, and Keir Starmer certainly has been one of those, and he will remain.
There's no way that he's friend with Trump. Trump is the least cool, calm and collected president ever. He doesn't like Trump. He just wants to have good relation with America because it serves no purpose to be in bad term with America. Trump is like a baby that if you tell him that he's great, he's gonna like you. And then if you say that he's bad another time, he's gonna hate you. So just tell him a little bit what he wanna hear. But then your action can be different from the word that you tell Trump. Trump is all about what you tell him and how you can boost his ego. This guy is good at boosting Trump ego without saying much about how great Trump is. Like earlier when he said, oh, it's important to have a good relationship with America because it's a powerful nation. Trump thinks that he talk about Trump when he say powerful nation. See, he's choosing his word carefully and he makes sure that Trump is on his good side. But deep down, he knows that Trump is a complete idiot. So.
And stay as my friend and hope that I'll be able to work with him on international affairs in the future. Other than that, I'm not going to meddle with British politics. Just sort yourselves out, please. We need you.
What do you mean, sort yourselves out?
In other words, stay British, stay calm, do what needs to be done. You know, we are in a very precarious situation in global politics, and we need a strong country like the United Kingdom. But remember that this is a process, and liberal democracy is never easy. It will always be challenged. That's what sorting yourself out means.
I'm still not clear, President Stubb.
She doesn't understand. He basically just said, yo, British, right now you suck. You're confused. It's the chaos in your country. Please clean your room. That's what he's saying. But he's saying it in such a polite way that he's not saying anything negative. He's basically trying to boost their morale like a military leader. I don't know if he was in the military, but he speaks like a military leader. And her, she doesn't understand because he's not trying to be dramatic. And she doesn't understand. I truly think that she doesn't understand what he's saying.
Forgive me. Can you give me an example of where you think things may be
Perhaps
less
my English is not clear enough. I just think it's very important that we have a strong and stable United Kingdom in Europe and in the world.
So you're talking about the frequency with which the UK changes prime ministers, I think. Obviously, you think that diminishes
try.
the UK?
Good try. Good try. Let's focus on the NATO summit.
Oh my God.
Okay. Do you know much about our incoming Prime Minister, who's very likely to be Andy Burnham, and his commitment to defending the UK and spending in NATO?
No, I don't know him personally, but as I said, I have a very close affinity to things British, and I think it's very important that we have a strong UK in Europe and the world, and I'm sure that we will continue on that path. The UK is an extremely important ally for us in Finland and elsewhere.
President Stubb, thank you very much for your time and thank you for speaking.
This was a lesson in how to conduct an interview. And you know, I don't know if you follow American politics, but Mamdani, the mayor of New York, speak very similar to him. Like, politically, they might not be aligned 100%, but the way that they handle the media, Zoran Mamdani and him, I don't even know his name again. What is his name? Alexander Stubb. How he speak and how Mamdani speak when they get an interview is amazing. And did you see Mamdani and Trump are friends again? They are not friends. It's just that Mamdani has a way with words. And some people are so gifted when it's time to talk and say the right thing that it's not going to piss off anyone. So you finish that interview and he said good thing about every country. Everyone. He didn't say anything positive. he throws some jab at the UK, but in a very positive way. Yes, you can do it. You can be great again, without saying you're bad, don't do this. He's not yelling at them. He's trying to teach them or encourage them. He speaks like Mamdani in New York, and I appreciate that. I wish more leaders were like this. Unfortunately, sometimes to get elected, being like him doesn't work. So, I mean, America, you had the complete opposite that got elected in Trump. This guy is one of the best speaker I have ever seen. I'm jealous.